My two amendments that I offered were, one, an attempt to make sure that the House Communications Office was open and neutral and nonpartisan, treated everybody fairly, and also that it would make sure that if it released any statements or anything like that, it would be attributable to a member. And that's to make sure that the House Communications Office doesn't become some kind of a government-funded propaganda office that issues statements without any accountability, without any authorship, that just come from government that no one's accountable for. So that was the First Amendment. The Second Amendment, if I can recall it, because it's been kind of a long day in there so far, and we've only been there about 90 minutes. The Second Amendment that I introduced was to ensure committee recorded voting. And right now, we've got a situation where a lot of people vote in committee without that vote ever being recorded. We have what we call voice votes. And the way it works is the committee chairman calls for a vote, and some people say yes, and some people say no. And the committee chairman makes a decision based on the volume of the voices as to whether the measure passed or not. And this has become a more and more significant problem, because if you go to a committee meeting, you'll often hear some people say yes very quietly, and then you'll hear other people yell no really loudly. And so when we're making decisions based on the voice volume, this is very far away from what we want, which is to count everybody's vote, which is what the people of Arkansas are entitled to do, and to send people to represent them in the House of Representatives. Those are the two. One of the arguments that the Speaker offered was that he agreed, if I understand him right, he agrees with the policy of it, but thinks it's a bad idea to write the policy into a rule. And this is an approach that I hear a lot in the Capitol, that we agree with you, but we think it's a bad idea to be bound by this rule. And that's something that I have a really hard time understanding, because sometimes to me that's not really a very strong argument, that we think it's a good idea, but we just don't want to be bound by this in case we decide someday to go away from this practice. So I personally think that's a weak argument. Clearly, to some people's minds, that's very dangerous, that we get a lot of recorded votes rather than voice votes. I mean, that doesn't strike me as very dangerous, because I typically know how I'm going to vote. I typically try to think about the best way to vote. But accountability and openness and taking responsibility for your votes, for some people, that's very, very dangerous.